Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Also, welcome to the friends watching us online. The Theophano Roundtable discussion has started in 2021 as an idea to discuss the very core of this award, the reason for awarding. So here we are today to discuss about Special Olympics and their vision. May I call on stage Mr. Efthymiadis, a member of the Board of Directors of the Governing Council of the Theophano Foundation, to greet you.
Kalispera, and good afternoon to everybody. So it is my turn as on behalf of the Chairman Andreadis, and the 6 founding members of Theophano Governing Council to welcome you all in this wonderful and much desired discussion. We had a wonderful evening last night. We were all very excited, and everybody asked what are we going to do this afternoon and what is the meaning of this discussion today, and we're looking forward to see this discussion very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is so nice to note that it is not only wars, massacres, distressed people, misery that we are facing in our days. We can indeed take strength from events like Theophano Prize Award, and as the program says, in a changing Europe, which is also very, very, very interesting. The nature and the spirit of this particular Special Olympics Thessaloniki Annual Prize Award allows a person like myself to share with you some personal facts, which many of us share, if not all of us in this room, and I will explain why. I am the first generation in Thessaloniki of a Greek origin business family that we know that was in the other side of the Aegean, in Asia Minor, in a city called Redestos, or Tekirdağ today, that they were there for several centuries doing their business, and suddenly they had to leave from there as refugees and come over to Greece due to well-known developments between the two countries. Redestos is just a few miles away from Constantinopolis, which was eventually called Istanbul, which still has the same meaning in Greek to the city, Istanbul, symbolic. I grew up and studied and was educated in a Greek American missionary high school that came all the way from Merzifund in Turkey, together with its students, to Thessaloniki, and restarted its operation again. At the same time that my grandfather, Nikos, the same name like me, landed in Thessaloniki harbor as a refugee from Redestos. My best friend at school was a Greek Jewish, and an Armenian, with families that have been in Thessaloniki for centuries, as well as my family in Redestos. My father, Efthymis, when I was a little grown up, he hurried to tell me that the first mayor of Thessaloniki, immediately after its liberation in 1912, just 110 years ago, was a prominent Ottoman Turk that was very much respected. The only reason that I recall these memories and I say it in front of you is because I'm inspired from yesterday's evening ceremony. And I would like to stress to our foreign guests that the Thessaloniki has the reason that Thessaloniki has never stopped being a city of more than 100,000 inhabitants for a time of over 2,300 years was just that. It's cultural, it's multicultural spirit, it's being a multicultural metropolis, still embedded with the roofs of the Hellenistic civilization and its values. It is now 5 years that we have the Emperor Theophano Prize Award, and I believe there are only very few organizations with such a deep humanitarian mission that has survived. We at the Governor Council are determined to continue developing the values of Theophano Prize Award. And awards like yesterday's give us a lot of strength and a lot of vision. And of course, we are very much grateful to our advisory council and the international personalities that are chaired by Herman von Rompuy, assisting us to make it happen. So we are now all ready to follow, enjoy, and hopefully participate in this discussion, this roundtable discussion by our excellent and prominent speakers on the subject of inclusive sports, driving human and social development for an ever-changing Europe, which has been the essence of Theophano Award. Dear Tim and Mary, since yesterday you are now part of the family of Theophano Empress Award. And dear Mr. Rompuy, you after 5 years of guiding Theophano Prize Award, you are now qualified to become what we call in Thessaloniki Salonikios. Salonikios is the title we give to those traditional members of our society. So you are now a Salonikios. So let me now call Mary Davis and today's speakers to come take the floor. And let us all give a great applause to our speakers today.
Well, as we get started, I want to thank you, Mr. Eftimiadis. Thank you so much for such a warm welcome and welcome us into the family of Thessaloniki. We're very privileged to be here. Do we have a video to start with or no? At the end. Okay, brilliant, fantastic. Okay, so Kalispera. Good evening. Thank you. Good evening. Really, we've had a whirlwind visit here, is all I can say, in this beautiful city of Thessaloniki. And I was struck this morning as we were running, and we did run, many of us here in the panel and myself, along that charming waterfront of yours. I could feel the pulse of the city in the background and the fusion of history and culture and beauty all rolled into one, all coming together. And a city that we know and have learned so much about in the last couple of days that has seen centuries of civilizations rise and fall. But yet, it still thrives as a vibrant, modern, welcoming, and generous city, made especially so by its people. So, to the people of Thessaloniki, to the friends we've made, to the family we now belong to, I say on behalf of all of us, a big thank you. Today was special, but yesterday, as they would say in the US, was awesome. It was awe-inspiring, that visit that we had to the ancient tombs, and particularly King Philip II, and standing there in the midst of all that history and the tombs, you could really feel like you were transported back in time when Macedonia stood as a powerful kingdom. So it was a really special treat to get there to visit those tombs. Last night, of course, receiving the Empire Theophano Prize in the magnificence of the Rotunda and seeing the breathtaking, is all I can say, performance of the unified music and dance display. It really gave goosebumps to all of us that were present and witnessed that. And as I was listening in the Rotunda and heard the story from and the transition that had occurred there from church to mosque, back to church, and yet its resilience that it had and the ability to adapt. And as I watched the dance, it was like the embodiment of all that. The resilience that we saw in the athletes and the unified partners, but also the grace, the poise, the freedom, and the creativity was artistic and art at its very best. So I, for one, will definitely be back here. It's not my last visit. And it's not my first visit either to northern Greece to celebrate Special Olympics, because not very far from here, in 2014, I came here with one of my bosses, Ambassador Pete Steele, who is here in the audience, and he serves on our board of directors. And we lit the flame of hope for the 2014 European Special Olympics Games, which were held in Antwerp. And in fact, that torch was received in Brussels by the then President of the European Council, Herman Van Rompuy. So like Thessaloniki, it seems like a seamless blend of past and present that was happening here these days. But of course, Greece has a very long and important history as part of the Special Olympics movement, from the many great torchlighting experiences to the hosting of our World Games here in Athens in 2011, to our partnership with Stavros Niarchos, and to the great friends we've met these past few days here. We've seen how the seeds that were planted way back then have now grown into greater visibility for our community, and that has happened under the leadership of Ambassador Nassis Kadalis and his wonderful staff and team, and also under the leadership of Special Olympics Europe Eurasia and my colleague David Evangelista. But of course, I have to mention the Lions Club as well. And if you were out for the run today, you would have seen the energy of and the passion of the Lions Club members. And that doesn't just happen here, but it happens all over the world. They're great friends of the movement. They were there with their mobile truck screening our athletes for having their eyes tested, etc., so that they could see better, perform better in their activities. And we're truly grateful to them for all the work and the passion over the past number of years that they've been involved. So last night we heard Tim speak about how Special Olympics expansion has paralleled Europe's own journey towards embracing diversity, dialogue, interdependence, and social inclusion. The very same values that the Empress Theophano Prize seeks to recognise and promote. And today's panel is intended to expand that conversation, to explore our shared values. From the education field, we'll hear, from the diplomatic field, and from the playing field itself. So it'll be very interesting to learn more about how we can all better collaborate in overcoming many of the challenges that sadly we still face in this area. And we'll hear directly from the athletes themselves, and it's very important that we hear their voice, that we hear their struggles, and that we hear how they've overcome the many obstacles that they have faced, and the power they have to change and adapt, just like we saw in the Rotunda last evening. I want to talk for a little while about sport, because sport to me has two elements. It's got the big, professional sport, football, golf, rugby, sailing, whatever it is, that we all are passionate about. We all watch, we all support with great might. But then we have the everyday sport. And I think the sad thing about this is sport is not really recognized as part of a child's academic experience. We see it in schools, it's often referred to as extracurricular activities. But of course, for those of us that have been involved in sport, and I've worked in sport in one way or another all my life, I see how much sport contributes to the development of the individual, every individual. And it is a gateway to understanding and to empathy and to many of the things that we heard Tim talk about last night, that sport teaches universal dignity. It teaches ethics, it teaches empathy, it teaches courageous action. And we teach that through play and through sport to young people through our Unified Schools programme every day around the world. And that is really why Special Olympics always starts with sport when we are seeking positive change. And last week, it was a great pleasure for me to attend the G7 Ministers' Meeting on Inclusion and Disability. It was a convening that was organised by the Italian government and by Minister Alessandra Locatelli. And she's a real force and represents a new wave of change makers across Europe. And she just intuitively understood that everyone benefits when barriers are removed for people with intellectual disability across employment, across health, and across education systems. And at that summit, I called on the ministers that were present to increase funding for programs that foster social inclusion for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I also asked them to support through their foreign aid program the developing world to invest in social inclusion and integration. And my third challenge was to volunteer for a Special Olympics event, or at least come out and see and watch a Special Olympics event. And Tim talked last night about his mum putting on a bathing suit and getting in the water and teaching children to swim. And that was where she got her most joy. And he encouraged everybody to put on a swimsuit. So I'm going to re-encourage again, all of you, not put on a swimsuit, put on a tracksuit. We heard from Herman last night as well, his first experience 20 years ago when he attended an event in his home country in Brussels, and the transformative effect that it had on his life. And if I remember correctly, he said it was like a breath of fresh air. So if you want a breath of fresh air, I say put your tracksuit on and your runners and out you go and get involved in one way or another. We have 60,000 events that happens all over the world, so there is definitely one close to you. Thank you. And going back to the G7 summit for a moment, because it was a watershed moment to have ministers of disability gather and be part of the G7. But what struck me was we had 6 panels and about 8 or 9 people on each panel. And in all those panels, there was not one person with an intellectual disability represented. And strangely enough, all the food that was prepared, all the food that was presented and served was actually done by people with an intellectual disability. So they were there, they were present, but they were silent. They didn't have a voice. And I really felt that was a missed opportunity, not to have their voice heard on some of those panels, because it is their presence, their tenacity, their advocacy that transforms attitudes, that breaks down the barriers of exclusion, and that drives a more welcoming, more inclusive world for all people. Everybody benefits, not just people with intellectual disability. And had they been invited to engage in the discussions and speak to the delegates about their lived experience, the ministers would definitely have emerged more richer for the experience, and they would have understood better the challenge that people with intellectual disability face. So, on that note, I'm delighted to introduce the panel and to introduce our moderator for the panel, Ciara Byland. Ciara is a wonderful friend of mine for 10 years. She's my boss now because I have a lot of bosses, because she also serves on the board of directors. She's accomplished in her sport. She's accomplished in public speaking. She has won 6 gold medals in cycling, and there is no end to the ability of Ciara. So without further ado, over to Ciara.
Wow, thanks, Mary. Big introduction. So yeah, thank you, Mary, for your inspiring words. Your remarks set a strong tone for our discussion today, highlighting the importance of all the work that we do on inclusion. Distinguished guests, esteemed panelists, and dear friends and colleagues. Welcome to the Theophano Foundation Prize Roundtable. Our theme today is Inclusion Sports, Driving Human and Social Development for Changing Europe. We aim to show how sports can promote social inclusion, we support human development, and address the challenges our societies face. I'm Ciara Byland, an athlete and a board member. I sit on the Special Needs Board of Directors and also on my programme as well. Alongside having the privilege of being the Global Athlete Congress Chair, being able to represent my country, and I'm really pleased to be your moderator for today. I didn't have a great inclusive experience at school. It was a very dark time for me. Inclusion is such an easy word to say, but it isn't so easy to do. I'd like to really ask you to search inside yourselves and find out what true inclusion means to you. For me, it's everybody's responsibility. It's something that evolves. It's so natural as breathing. Breathing, we do it. We don't have to think about it. Just do it. I'm very excited to have join me in outstanding panelists and speakers. First of all, Dr. Timothy Shriver. Chairman of Special Olympics International, whose vision and tireless efforts to continue transforming lives around the world. We have Dr. Jacqueline Roden, Chief of Global Youth and Health Education at Special Olympics International. Her pioneering work, education innovation, youth leadership has made a long-lasting impact. We have Mr. Gilmore Board, a Sergeant Shriver Global Messenger. He's also the Special Olympics and Multi-Athlete Leadership Council. He is a global athlete leader. He inspires us through his journey and his advocacy work. We have Ambassador Dionysius Cordalis, President of Special Olympics Hellas. His commitment to fostering inclusion resonates deeply within the European community. Most recently at the National Special Olympics Games, road tracking in May 2024. Miss Clelia Fantazi, an Olympic medalist in rhythmic gymnastics at the Sydney 2000. She continues to exhibit excellence in sport and dedication to Special Olympics mission. Together, we gather here tonight. Let us reflect on Tim's words, who accepted the Emperor Theophano Prize on behalf of Special Olympics International last year. He reminds us that this recognition isn't just for an organisation, but it's also a movement that has been changing lives and transforming communities for over 50 years. His mum's simple but yet profound idea, providing equal opportunities for individuals with intellectual and mental disabilities, has grown into a global movement and serves millions of people in 200 countries. As Tim said, disability rights are human rights. Everyone has the right to participate in society. Everyone has talents to celebrate. Tonight's roundtable discussion focuses on achievements and potential of people with IDD. It highlights the important roles of organisations like Special Olympics Hellas in shaping government policies, involved in the private sector, and promoting social change. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Together, let's continue to champion inclusion, respect, dignity, and work together towards a future where everyone is valued and celebrated for their contributions. My first question is to Tim, regarding educating the heart and the mind. Last night you stated the true power of Special Olympics doesn't lie in the medals won or the records broken, but in the barriers to overcome and the mind open and touch the hearts. This brings me to mind a quote from Aristotle. Educating the heart without educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. How do you believe Special Olympics exemplifies these ideas, and what steps can be taken to further harness the power of sports and education to drive social change and inclusion for people with IDD?
Let's give it up for Kira. And thank you, Mary, for your comments. And thank you all for being here, the distinguished members of the board, President, and all of it. It's been an extraordinary experience. So I'm going to start with this morning's fun run. Anybody in this audience run? How many people? Okay, so we have some hands. So if you had an experience like mine, I got a chance to start towards the front. And the first thing I saw was Gilmore going flying right by me. And I couldn't even see him. He was going so fast, although he apparently didn't go that far. This one? Let me start. No, I'm not going to start over. So in the race, I was looking down at the race and thinking, okay, I can get to the end and keep up a pretty good pace. I was a little bit winded. I'm not a runner, but I got to the end and I realized that's only halfway. So I'm like, oh my God. I know it sounds pathetic, but here's what happened. I'm turning the corner. I'm like, I got to go all the way back. And I got about 100 yards around the corner, and Kira came up alongside me, and she was about to pass me. And then I think she was charitable, and she slowed down, and we ran together. And I thought to myself, okay, she's pacing me. And then we got about, I don't know, was it about 200 yards from the end? And the pace starts to pick up a little bit, like you've got your final sprint. And I could feel Kira pushing me, and I was trying to keep up, and then a little faster, and I kept up. And then I think to myself, I got to beat her. I want to cross the line before she does. And I'm inching forward, and then she inches forward. And then I think she won. So I want to answer your question with a question. Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all, according to Aristotle. And I wonder in this room how many people, how many countries, how many provinces, how many educators could answer the question about how they're educating the heart. I would bet that every education minister in the world would have an answer on what they're doing on technology, or what they're doing on mathematics, what they're doing on language, what they're doing on computers, how they're educating the next generation for robotics, for artificial intelligence, for science, and so on. I don't think most educators, and I count myself as an educator, can answer the question, how are you educating the heart? That race this morning gave me a huge amount of, I would say, heart education. A test of my ability, a recognition that I'm not the fastest, but I can do my best, a friend who looks out for you in the midst of the competition, a push to do better than you thought you could at the end, a challenge that someone can make you do better than you thought you could because they're pushing you in sport. None of those lessons are written down. Just like when Mary was describing the dancers last night, no one at the end said, write down all the things you learned. Because most of us are so focused on learning being the work of the head. But I suspect that anyone that was there last night and anyone who ran with me today got an education of the heart. My view is that the Special Olympics experience for children with and without intellectual disability provides an opening to a deepened sense of empathy, which is an emotional skill. I said this last night, Mary repeated it earlier. A deepened sense of capacity for courageous action, a deepened sense of human dignity. All of a sudden, if you watched last night, you couldn't help but be challenged into wondering, who are those women on the stage? What are their friendships? How did they meet? How do they train? Aren't they beautiful together? Those are the lessons of the heart. So my view is that my answer is quite simple. We have to continue to engage people in crossing boundaries through play that open the aperture of the heart, open the lens down here. That lens is closed off by the work up here so many times. Open the lens down here so we can see more clearly. This panel needs to be not a statement of my opinion, but a challenge to all of us. If we don't do better, Jackie, Kira, Gilmore, all of us, if we don't do better, Nasus, if we don't do better at challenging schools to teach the lessons of the heart, we will fail the test of our generation. And so we are committed to being relentlessly demanding that children with intellectual and developmental disabilities get into school, and that we use sports to educate the hearts of all children in school to the dignity of all children.
Wow. Your response is great because it's making people think about what they're going to do, their actions, but also the benefit and maybe
Did
not the
I
benefit
win
to
or did you
others.
win today, by the way?
It was quite close. I think maybe you won on that one because I am not a runner, believe me. No, it's the truth. My next question is for Ambassador Dionysius Cordelis, and it's going to be talking about the role of Europe. So, Ambassador Cordelis, when speaking at the National Special Olympics Games in Lautraki in 2014, you stated, "Let's make these games another precious journey towards inclusion and acceptance, focusing on our athletes who are steadily claiming the obvious, to be included through sports as equal members of society under conditions of respect and solidarity." As president of Special Olympics Hellas for 9 years, how can European nations leverage the power of events like Special Olympics Games to promote human and social development? What specific actions can European governments and institutions take to ensure the values of inclusion and respect is championed by these games and translated into a broader societal change?
Thank you. Thank you, Kira. If you don't mind, I go a little bit more global than the European Union. I go back to the United Nations, where in 2006 it was adopted the declaration for the people with disabilities, the protection of people with disabilities. That was a text that, as I know from my previous experience, was drafted, was corrected, was redrafted, and then it was presented and was adopted by unanimity. Before that, that was speaking about the rights of people with disabilities. That was 2006. What was in this declaration actually has been said in so many words 18 years earlier by a dynamic, devoted, and extraordinary woman, Eunice Kennedy. Eunice Kennedy, 38 years earlier, has thought of that, and she has put into practice precisely what this Declaration of the United Nations stipulated. And since then, the Special Olympics carry on these principles, on these values, on these ideas. But you know, a declaration adopted by the United Nations has to be implemented. It's not enough just to adopt. Everybody adopts, everybody say unanimously adoption, great. But what about the implementation? And there we come, 18 years afterwards, 15 years afterwards, and what do you see? That has not been implemented. That the European Union, and come to your question, finds itself obliged to adopt a strategic plan, which actually, what was the essence of this plan? That the implementation of the United Nations Declaration has failed. And that's where Special Olympics come in. Because what do we do there? We actually fill the gap. If you adopt the declaration, because you speak about governments and people, then this declaration goes to the governments. The governments traditionally, and unfortunately, have a bureaucratic approach to these things. They have the text, they have it there, and they somehow don't know what to do with it. And that's where the citizens, the society of the citizens come and tell them what to do. But in fact, it is the citizens, again, it was Eunice Kennedy who started this thing. It went to the governments and then went back to the people. And that's where we are. That's what we do. And this is what we want to do, is to work precisely because governments need to help us as well. And that's what we do. We promote synergies. This is the word key. Synergy with the states. This will take us much further. And this is what we do. So this is my answer. What we do is to work, we do our job, and then we help the states, instead of being the opposite, to do their job as well. And that's how we go forward, and that's how more and more people come to our ranks. That's how more and more athletes are joining us. That's how we take young people out of their homes and bring them into the light, and they give them the pleasure of the athleticism, the pleasure of being with other people, the pleasure of inclusion.
Yeah. I agree that, working in equal partnership is beneficial for both sides, and it's something that you need to be able to move forward. Thank you very much. My next question is to Gilmore Bog regarding call to action. So Gilmore, you are a Sergeant Shriver Global Messenger. You are the chair of the Special Olympics Malta Athlete Leadership Council. You're a global athlete leader. You joined Special Olympics 10 years ago in 2014. Before joining the Special Olympics, you felt frustrated and alone. Gilmore, do you want to add anything?
First of all, thank you, Kira. Thank you, everyone. Yes, I would like to talk about it a bit. Before I joined Special Olympics, unfortunately in school I was bullied. I was targeted because I was different. I felt alone because I was different. I felt I didn't have a purpose. I wake up every day, I said, what am I doing here where no one wants me, where I'm capable of doing nothing? I had no purpose. The bullying got so bad. I went to a dark place. It was very difficult for me. But then I met Special Olympics. Special Olympics changed my life. I said it before, I'll keep on saying it. I am here today thanks to Special Olympics. Special Olympics saved my life. And it not only saved my life, unfortunately, I left school without the ability to read. Special Olympics with time, dedication, love, and patience helped me learn how to read. Nowadays, I do speeches, which is, I cannot even believe that I am able to do that. But it didn't stop there. We always aim high. Recently, I went out for the local council, and I'm proud to say that I got elected. As a person with intellectual disability, I can say I'm in politics, and I've got elected, which is something that we work on. And the happiest moment of my life happened when I had the honor nowadays to say I am currently working with Special Olympics, so a dream come true. So in life, things could be difficult. Things are difficult, but you need to find someone who will help you, someone that you'll be there to help. From that dark moment, Special Olympics was my light. I saw only darkness, but Special Olympics was the torch that I needed to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So for me, that is kind of my story. We all have a story. We all have that moment of darkness, but we can all rise up. We can all believe that we can achieve anything. That's what I have to say about Special Olympics because it's helped me so much. You don't know how much every athlete goes through. We all have a story. We all have a life goal. We need people to help us more, like Special Olympics. Special Olympics does not just give us sports. It believes in inclusion, and that's what it is. Person with a different ability. Because I'm a person with disability, should I be in society? Why am I different from any other person? I'm trying to break these barriers, but we need your help. Thank you.
So Tim has issued a challenge to see difference not as something that divides us, but instead makes our shared identity rich and vibrant. What can individuals and organisations do to support this vision and help increase the inclusive behaviours that Special Olympics embodies?
Dr. Driver's vision is to embrace differences and enrich our identity. This involves both individuals and organizations. To me, this means learning about different friends, different abilities, different cultures, and increase my experiences. The importance of listening to other stories, like mine, like number of athletes have gone through what I've gone through, like bullying and not being accepted. We can break these barriers. Through Special Olympics, I have made new friends and gotten stronger. They helped me fight my taboo and taught me that I am a worthy citizen. Coaches and volunteers form part of Special Olympics. They have helped us to make differences and allows us to see the way forward. What Special Olympics is doing with us athletes is building us into free-spirited citizens and showing us the way to a positive life. Helping Special Olympics is helping us. I am using the word helping us. That's what I needed when I was passing through dark moments. And what I received from Special Olympics, I received help. So my message to you, don't be afraid of using the word help. Sometimes you need to use it in communities, in schools, within our society. Everyone needs to feel valued. Everyone needs to be given a chance. Just like Special Olympics has allowed us to see the positive values and brought out the ability to shine in all of us. Special Olympics promotes inclusivity and supports diversity. It highlights our message, our voice, and this leads to new ideas and strengthens in all cultures. Thank you.
It's so great to hear that you're promoting asking for help, and Special Olympics being there to listen, guide, give support, and promotion. My next question is for Clea Pantazi. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And it's going to be talking about a catalyst for change. So Miss Pantazi, as a bronze medalist in rhythmic gymnastics at the Sydney 2000 Olympics and a dedicated judge for Special Olympics, you witnessed firsthand the transformative power of inclusive sport. Your experience spanned both traditional competitive sports, inclusive, adaptive sports for athletes with IDD. How can your personal journey and achievements serve as a catalyst for promoting broader acceptance and inclusion with the sport community and beyond?
Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ. Θα μιλήσω στα ελληνικά γιατί έχω αρκετό άγχος. Δεν συνηθίζω να είμαι ομιλήτρια σε τέτοιο απαιτητικό κοινό, αλλά συνηθίζω να βρίσκομαι στα γήπεδα δίπλα σε παιδιά και να προπονώ. Η απάντησή μου με μία λέξη είναι συμπερίληψη. Και τι εννοώ, θα σας μιλήσω μέσα από το προσωπικό μου ταξίδι στην οικογένεια των Special Olympics. Η πρώτη μου επαφή με τα Special Olympics ήταν το 2010.
It was in 2010 when I had the first contact with Special Olympics when I was a volunteer in the games in Athens. I was fascinated by what I saw and experienced. Women athletes wearing their suits with glitter on their faces, making up, being ready to do their best on the floor. As soon as the games were over, the first thing I did was to go close to Mrs. C.B. Bickman, who was in charge of gymnastics in the States, about Special Olympics. I told her how enthusiastic I was and how impressed I was by her work. And I said that I was willing to be part of that family and that she could use me as in any way she wanted to. In summer 2013, she invited me in Atlantis in her gym together with my sister Annie, who is an Olympic winner, and Mrs. As well. And she also invited my mother. The international jury worked voluntarily in order to adjust the code of scores to the Special Olympics code. Annie and I, based on that new code, made the choreography for all the new programs that the athletes would do for the following 8 years. We video recorded them and we sent them to the federations of all countries. That was the first step made, and I was more more proud than ever being part of that family and being able to offer some of my experience to Special Olympics. Then we had the World Games in Los Angeles, where I was part of the jury, and at the end of the games, we taught the new choreography to trainers and athletes. Following that, my sister and I worked in Athens in a Calithea gym. We include the Special Olympic girls in our trainings. We all train together and we participate in the performances of our association together. Three of these girls, Flora, Ioanna, and Mariana, danced for you yesterday at Rotunda Monument and you uploaded them. That was our greatest achievement, inclusion in the training and performances of these girls and the games that we started implementing and organizing at national level with the support of Mr. Kodelas. Our athletes had the opportunity to be awarded the Pan-Hellenic Games, so they didn't have to compete only 4 years in World Games. So we reached Abu Dhabi, where I gave a score for my own athletes. I was greatly moved. And I didn't hesitate to give the absolute 10 to one of these athletes because she was marvelous indeed. Then COVID came and all physical training stopped, but we continued training Zoom online in a world community that continued training and communicating with the rest of the world online. My wish is one and only. I want our associations to include Special Olympic kids in their training programs. They will all be benefited. They will learn a lot from these kids. This journey is fascinating. It is so fascinating that when I was pregnant, 8 months pregnant, I traveled to Berlin in order to meet my Special Olympics family. I would like to thank the Theophano Foundation for recognizing what Special Olympics and Dr. Timothy Shriver do. You give us more strength to continue even more willingly. You gave voice to our work. Thank you very much. May we have an even better future. Thank you.
Powerful words, I must say. Last night, the performance was amazing. It was powerful, emotional, but so poised. And it's great to hear your story of how you connected with Special Olympics athletes.
Thank you.
My next question is for Dr. Jacqueline Jodel regarding defining inclusion in education. So as Chief Global Youth and Education at Special Olympics with a background in education, innovation, and policy, you recently discussed a similar theme at the 2024 Latin American Regional Games, providing valuable insights and inclusive education. How does Special Olympics define inclusion in education? And what lessons can be drawn about inclusive practices like Special Olympics school-based programming? Do these lessons vary by country or region?
Thank you, Kara, for the question. This is on? Yes? Thank you. And it's such a pleasure to be here today, and I want to thank the Theophano Foundation for the honor for all of us, and especially the glorious evening last night that we had. It was truly one of the most poignant Special Olympics events that I've been able to attend. So in my role with Special Olympics, I've had this opportunity to travel around the world, and really what's one of the most striking pieces of learning is that so many governments, so many policymakers are really not so clear on the definition of inclusion. There's the lack of clarity often then gets in the way of their policy action and often gets in the way of their implementation. For us at Special Olympics, it's pretty simple. We've talked a lot about how simple this is. We believe that if you teach children to play together, they'll better be able to learn together, and they're going to better be able to thrive together. And in this very simple framework, there really, I think, are two lessons. The first is that despite the lack of clarity that we see out there in the global conversations about inclusion, when you start to talk to youth, and it's really clear up here on the stage, when you start to talk about youth, there is an absolute consistency in their definition of inclusion. There's a remarkable similarity across how they really view inclusion. And what you start to realize is, based on that, how we are really more alike than we are different. Not only do they know what their definition is, but they know what it looks like. And most importantly, they really know what it feels like. They know it feels like respect. They know it feels like safety. They know it feels like belonging. They know that it feels like connection. Those are the things that you start to describe when you ask them what an inclusive school setting looks like. The second thing, the second lesson that we learn is that youth and teachers are crystal clear about their desire to learn how to include. You can't just say include. We have to teach inclusion. And we have a very simple framework for teaching inclusion. It's about understanding that all humans deserve dignity. It's about understanding that humans absolutely need to know how to empathize and to perspective take. And finally, it's really teaching young people how to stand up at times in the face of exclusion, or to stand up and include, even though at times it may be uncomfortable to do so. And then what we do at Special Olympics, once we teach it, because we know that we can teach inclusion, then we give them a chance to practice it. And this is absolutely essential. So at Special Olympics, we use sport and we use some youth leadership, and we give youth an opportunity to practice it. And what we see is these relationships, we see these friendships forming. And out of that, what starts to emerge is an understanding of commonalities where differences really start to melt away. And the last thing I'll say is that what's so important about this is that this understanding of bridging differences across, in our case, bringing together those with and without intellectual and developmental differences, that understanding of difference really extends to other differences, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's culture, whatever other differences exist. And there are so many differences that divide us. And so what this teaches young people to do, and it teaches them to do on the sports field and then bring into their classrooms, is that we are far better when we use those differences to unite us than it is to separate us.
The key message that I picked up on is that unified approach, having people with and without intellectual developmental disabilities working together. That empathy is really important to keep moving around that cycle to kind of be more inclusive. I totally agree with that one. I have a question for Ambassador Cordelas. When government supports young people and educators, it can make inclusion truly sustainable. What are some of the opportunities governments can provide to ensure sustained inclusion in schools and the community?
Thank you, Kira. We talk again about governments, right? We are there because actually we don't do, our task has many faces. One of them, hard to believe sometimes from the people on the street, is that we, the people, the Special Olympics, we form policies before the governments do it, because they see us being active all around, and then they know that there is something different happening, something nobler happening, and then they approach us, or they let us approach them much easier. So what do we do? I spoke earlier about synergies. This is what we do. I'll tell you a specific example that happened here in Greece. What is the way to approach the young generation? The quickest and the safest way is through the education. So what we did is we have already signed an agreement, a 3-year agreement that was renewed now with the Ministry of Education. This agreement gives us free access to all levels of education, where we go to schools and then we teach them, both teachers and pupils, what we are, what we do, what is our philosophy. And then already we have Special Olympics in the making there. And then the next step is what? The safest and quickest and most entertaining way to integrate people, with disabilities is the Play Unified that Timothy just mentioned earlier. So Play Unified is the quickest way. It is amazing how people without disabilities come to our invitation and they play with our athletes. And this is wonderful because in this young generation, and leaving the agreement apart, this morning, there were not just all these young people just running. No. I saw amongst them a lot of young leaders. I saw them that these are in the making, the Special Olympics young leaders in the making, because these young people, they go back this afternoon and they will be talking to their parents and then tomorrow to their friends and to their relatives and everything. And then this is something very solid. These people will never forget. These people are already, I consider them already Special Olympics. And this is something that it's so precious and so easy to do, but you have to do it. And this will also encourage the government, because the governments, what do they want? They want to please the people, right? So when they see there is a tendency for something, they're interested and say, what is this? What happens there? And then they approach, and then the synergy, but the synergy coming from us, from the Special Olympics. And this is what encourages the governments. And this is how we cooperate with the governments. And that's how I say about this agreement that we have. But it's not just, sports. It's far more than that. I mean, we have the family forum. We speak to the families. We in big events, like we have the national games, and in many parts of Greece, we have the families coming, and then we talk to them about health, about food, about many things. And even we answer to questions that many of them, sensitive questions, that they do not dare to ask. They don't know how to ask. And then we come out and we tell them, this is how it is. Because, the young athletes, they grow. And they grow together with them. They grow all their body, everything. So there are questions coming. And there we are, precisely with specialized people to inform the people, to inform the parents how to do and what to do.
So it sounds like we have 3 parts you need to work on. You got the young athletes who are becoming leaders, educating the government's open mind and hearts, and then families and connection. Thank you very much. I have a question for Gilmore. What strategies or initiatives do you think can be implemented to ensure the contributions of individuals with IDD are recognised and valued, reinforcing the core European values of diversity, respect and unity?
To ensure the contribution of individuals with intellectual disabilities are recognized and valued, we need to make sure that we have a strong awareness campaigns about the highlights of our achievements, media stories, and international or local events that showcase our talent and success. I also think we should promote more unified inclusive sports, meeting with peers in schools and clubs. We need to make sure that people with intellectual disabilities find employment and hold jobs. I envision a future where every athlete with intellectual disability is given the opportunity to find a job that not only showcases their unique ability, but also provides a sense of dignity and respect. It is essential that athletes are supported in finding meaningful employment that aligns with their skills, allowing them to contribute to society and feel valued for their contribution. We need to get all local councils to contribute, to engage, so that our voices are heard and the message is out there. We need to make sure that we are represented in groups to ensure that we have a platform to express our needs. We need to be recognized in various fields, as I said, not only in sports, but in other areas such as art and music. There are other things such as professional trainings for educators. Families are an important part in this strategy, as their insight can shape progress better. These are my insights.
What a powerful message that people want to see the recognition being understood and valued. I have one question for you all now. As we look forward to the future, what is your vision for the growth of inclusivity globally? And how can we as stakeholders collaborate to build a more inclusive and equitable world for all? Who wants to go first?
I wonder, should we open it up for the audience to answer that question? I wonder. No, yeah.
The question again. Oh, I see. As we look forward to the future, what is your vision for the growth as we look forward to the future? What is the vision for growth of inclusivity globally? How can we as stakeholders collaborate to build a more inclusive and equitable world for all?
Hello, Kira, you're much better than me. Well, inclusion is a value, and I think that this is how it should be considered from everyone, with or without intellectual disability. In Special Olympics Hellas, through the Play Unified, Learn Unified, it's an educational program, which I feel so lucky to be in charge of it. We visit schools every day and we meet young people ready to accept the challenge of inclusion. They are full of energy, they have modern minds, and they just ask for the chance to take action. So if we educate them, give them the space to live it by their own point of view, play unified, I believe that we must have a step backwards in order to give space for the new generation to act. They are ready for this. They have the mindset. We have to be, as I said, a step back. Well, from my personal point of view, my vision would be that someday there will be no need to visit schools and talking about inclusion. It should be for granted. I wish that I will be here and live it, have the chance to see this happening. I believe that disability is our business, if we have disability or not. So if the older ones, having myself in this also, change our mindsets towards disabilities, we can make it happen. Inclusion, for sure we are towards inclusion. Mindset is the key for inclusion, I believe.
If I can I just build on that a little bit? What you're saying is so important, and just two points. First of all, it's the notion of mindsets, and we call it in our work at Special Olympics, we call it inclusive mindsets. And there is a whole load of research behind the fact that there is such a mindset that defaults to inclusion. Once you teach young people, once you teach educators what's included in that mindset. The other point, the second point I want to make in terms of what you said, is this notion of how play, she mentioned play unified, learn unified, which is what our unified schools programming is called here in Greece. And actually, we have it in over 20 different countries across the world, fortunately provided by the generosity of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. But what you find when you put that program into schools, and the ambassador alluded to this, is it becomes a positive disruptor to systems change. So you start at the ground level, on the playground, in the classroom, in the school, and you start to create these mindsets, and at mass, they start to change the social fabric of the school. And that in turn starts to create pressure on the system to drive more inclusion. I think it's one of the most important things at Special Olympics that we do. There's no underestimating the fact that what you saw this morning when we did the run, and what you see all over the world in schools when we're doing unified schools, is yes, it is indeed in the grassroots, it's in the community, but we're pushing change in systems. And we need more change in systems. So my vision for inclusivity is that more governments absolutely start to walk the talk by funding these types of programs like unified schools, like other inclusive programs, to create learning environments that are far more inclusive.
I think it's, these are great comments. I'm not going to restate them. I think we have to be honest about something, however. This prize is 5 years old. There's the famous prize, the Scandinavians, I'm not going to name it, comes from Norway and Sweden and so on. And the prize is in, chemistry and economics and sciences. And then there's a prize in peace. Very famous, rightly so. Usually defined as people who end wars. Usually, not always, but mostly defined as people who have great vision to end a war. This prize is, I believe, way ahead of its time, because it is telling us that there is a new issue in the world. Now you say it's an old issue, bring Theophano. No, it's a new issue now. And people are still arguing about economics and trade and environment and education funding and all these things. And they will continue to argue about those issues. But I think this prize is telling us there's a new issue. And the issue is, how do we bridge divides? We do not have a difference problem. You look around this room, everybody's different. Nobody's even flinches at it. Of course we're all different. Of course there are conservatives and liberals. Of course there are socialists and capitalists. That's not new. We don't have a difference problem. We have a contempt problem. It's very different. And the reason I say this is because when you ask the question, Kara, what do we have to do? We have to be clear that many, St. Paul, very famous here, one of the things he says is, sometimes he says, I'm not going to get it exactly right, the good that I want to do, I don't do. And the bad that I don't want to do, I do. This is the problem we have with governments. They say, you said it earlier, sign the proclamation, Convention on the Rights of Disability, Mary mentioned it, this and the other thing. They want to do the right thing, but they don't do it. They just don't do it. We got to be honest. And they don't do it because they don't yet see that this is the issue of our time. It's not clear to them yet. It's not clear. That's why this prize I'm so honored by, but also so excited about. We have to elevate this issue. How do we teach the next generation how to model themselves on Theophano and Kira and Gilmore and their colleagues? How do we teach the next generation how to reduce contempt and hatred as a means of solving problems? And how do we increase the chance that meeting and playing and treating each other with dignity is actually the way to manage differences? Everybody says, we're going to get rid of differences. No, we're not. It's not going to happen. We're going to have 50 years from now, socialists and capitalists, conservatives and liberals, people from the north, people from the south, people that want to have this and people want to, it's not going to change. The question is, are we going to survive and get there by reducing the contempt and intolerance that is in the culture now? Everybody keeps asking me, what's going to happen in the United States elections? What's going to happen in the United States elections? I mean, everybody wants to talk about Special Olympics, but then they want to talk about the United States elections. The United States has a huge problem. Contempt is control. It's a contempt problem. It's a divisiveness, not a difference problem. This panel is saying we've got to be fierce in saying to people, wake up, wake up. There's a new issue in the world. We're trying to announce that, and I think we have to, like Gilmore said, we need publicity, we need awareness, we need politicians who will go into public life and advocate. We need diplomats, we need coaches. I mean, this story, your story is so beautiful. I mean, you just saw the athletes and all of a sudden your whole life, it was like the issue hit you and you were like, oh my God, that's what I want to be on that team. And you travel and it's, and your students last night were stunning because you saw it. And I think this is our challenge. We still have this great challenge to face. We have to highlight Houston, you know, in the United States, Houston, we have a problem. Brussels, you know, Athens, Paris, London, Berlin. We got a problem. We got a problem. We're not managing difference in a healthy way. We got a solution. We can teach children and teach adults how to do it.
Powerful words, powerful messages, lots of actions. We've got to, be supportive, promote, have empathy, have balance. Got a lot to do. Thank you all for your answers and your answers as well. I'd like to put it out to the audience. Do they have any questions for our panelists? There should be a mic going around.
As Mr. Efthymiadis stated in the beginning, we live in times of great distress. We live in unprecedented times, and I think we will all agree to this. There are two serious world conflicts right now, and all diplomatic attempts to resolve these conflicts seem to fail. So my question is, if Special Olympics have thought about taking a very active initiative in order to promote global peace. And I ask this question because all the humanitarian values that Special Olympics promote, like inclusion, diversity, equality, solidarity, collaboration, are very tightly connected with peace. And I know that you support the International Day of Sport for Development and Peace. And we have a very strong collaboration with United Nations, like Lions International do, that I'm a member of Lions International. Ambassador Kodelas talked about synergies. We have a strong collaboration as Lions International with Special Olympics. I think that maybe Special Olympics would be the most suitable global organization to be a leader in such an attempt. And I envision a day in the near future that there will be sport events in all countries, in all towns, that there are Special Olympics athletes, sports event with the sole purpose of promoting global peace. And I think about, and I say that maybe sports, inclusion, diversity, and all these great values that Sport Olympics promote, they may be the key to bring again global peace in our world. Thank you.
Who would like to answer that question?
I can. First of all, it's a beautiful vision. If we had another half an hour, I would tell you the story of trying to create games in the Middle East, in particular, in the West Bank, in Gaza, with the Egyptians, Jordanians, and Israelis together. It's a long story, not such a great ending, but we tried. We tried very hard. This is quite some time ago. I won't bore you with all the details. But I will say, in our games, I wish you march in, and Iran and Iraq and Israel are all in sequence. This is alphabetical. And the athletes are, everybody's having a great time, whether the games are in Abu Dhabi or whether they're in London. And the Israeli delegation marched in. There were so much concern in Abu Dhabi when we had World Games, so much concern. What would the crowd reaction be? And the place went nuts. Huge cheers for the athletes from Israel when they marched in. This is in 2019. So you're right. There is a kernel of understanding. Sometimes political figures, it snaps. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. I hate those people are horrible. I hate that country. I hate that race. I hate that religion. And then you see, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait a minute. They're just track runners and basketball players and young people and mothers and fathers and coaches. And you can shock people into some recognition that there's a deeper sense in which we're connected. We have a lot of work to do to amplify that piece of our message, and I think it is fruitful, and I appreciate the question. I hope we can continue to think about it together. Lions have been, maybe that's a new venture. David Evangelista can think about it. Maybe that's a new cooperative venture we do at Lions, who aim to serve, we aim to play. Maybe we play and serve together the cause of peace in some new collaboration in the future. It might be quite beautiful.
Thank you, Tim, for that helpful and important message as well. Does anybody else have a question?
Thank you. It's such an engaging panel, and I don't normally do this, but I have one suggestion and two questions. My name's Latika Burke. I'm a writer-at-large for the Australian publication The Nightly. Firstly, the suggestion to what you're talking about. When I started my career in media, one of the local organisations took me out in a wheelchair to discover what it was like to move around the town. And I know that's physical disability, but I have never, ever looked at pathways and footpaths the same ever since doing that experience. So don't underestimate how targeting, conveying what it's like to have an intellectual disability can mean for someone who has never experienced that or had that in their family. My question, I guess, is we've talked a lot about the negatives. What about the proactive and who is doing things well? So in Australia, we have a national disability insurance scheme. It's had a lot of trouble, but it is kind of widely recognised to be very good. And secondly, Mr. Shriver, you speak so passionately. Why aren't you running? Politics is in your DNA, surely.
I'm running right here. I ran today. There are a lot of countries there are a lot of places. I think, Jackie, you want to answer?
No, you answer the political question. Are you going to run?
Yeah, I did run this morning.
Okay.
I have a sore hamstring because of it.
She has a plane to catch.
This was a plane to catch.
Last word.
Then it was an honor to be here today with you. I will see you in 3 years to the next Special Olympic Games. Thank you all. Unfortunately, I have to catch a flight.
So I'll answer. I'll answer the question about who's doing it well. I would love to sit up here and say, oh my gosh, there are so many great case studies on inclusive education. The reality is there just are not. What the global state of inclusion is that there's lots of chatter, lots of policy talk, but there's far less policy action. Now, there are definitely some good examples. I can mention, for example, in Portugal, where they moved all of their segregated schools to resource centers, and they shifted those students into mainstream schools. I can talk about the UAE, where due to the games that we had in 2019, they were ready to go with a parallel system of segregated and mainstream schools, and they totally turned it upside down and decided to go with an inclusive education system. I can talk about here in Greece, and the ambassador did such a beautiful job, but the programming that we've done here really has put pressure on the education system to be more inclusive. But what I can tell you is that when you do look at good case studies, there are really 3 characteristics that you see across them. The first one that you see is there's an emphasis on teachers, right? The second one that you see, and Dr. Schreiber talked about this, is the head and the heart. You just don't define learning in terms of academics. And by academics, I'm talking about reading, writing, and math. You talk about a profile of learning that also includes social emotional development. Whether you call those soft skills, we all know it's communications, it's conflict resolution, it's empathy, it's perspective taking. And the last thing that you see across good case studies is you see an understanding of the role of families and of parents in their children's education. And what is so interesting about those 3 characteristics is what works for children with intellectual and developmental disabilities works for all kids. So this is a best practice across what is just the best type of learning systems for all children, regardless of ability.
I mean, it's a good question. I just add one point. If you're hearing here that it's all doom and gloom and it's all bad, that's not true. I am not that person. I don't like social cause organizations that come in telling you the world is a disaster. It's not true. The world is much better for our community than it was 20 years ago or 50 years ago, God forbid 100 years ago. I mean, life and death different. And the average lifespan in 1950 of a person with an intellectual disability was 7. Okay, 7. Today, now we're getting into the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. So the healthcare systems, deinstitutionalization, inclusive education, family support systems are miles and miles, legions ahead of where they have been in the past. And we should be very proud of that. We, not us as an organization, but the global community, political leaders, social leaders, educators, healthcare leaders should be very proud of that. Employers are now starting to get a little bit more. What you're hearing here is the frustration that we haven't gotten further. And if you hear it as frustration, blame my mother, because she was always, I said earlier tonight, we had World Games I know I'm talking too much, in China, and the opening ceremonies in Shanghai, we had about 80,000 people in the stadium, and CCTV1, which is the biggest watch channel in the world. I mean, most people here have never watched it, but the average rating is about 100 million, which makes everything else look small, right? So I said to my mother afterwards, she came and the President Hu Jintao was there, people cheering, bands. I mean, you couldn't believe the pageantry. 150, 60 countries, 100 million viewers. I said, that was just amazing, wasn't it? And she goes, I don't think so. I was like, well, we have so much more to do. So if you're hearing restless dissatisfaction, It's the passion we have for the goal, not the anger we have at the progress.
Let's get a clap for everybody. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our panel. A big thank you to all our panelists for your impactful remarks and inclusive education, sport, social development, and together we aim to build a more inclusive and fair society. Let's all remember, let's make inclusion as easy as breathing. I am pleased to hand over to President Herman van Rompuy, Chairman of the Advisory Council of Theophano Foundation. We are honored to have you here with us.
Dear friends, one has asked me to draw the conclusions from this meeting. I said to Mary Davis yesterday evening, I will work hard this evening on the conclusions. And that's a habit of those people who have that kind of responsibility, not to listen and to tell their own story, independent of what is said during the conversation. I will not do so. I will try not to do so. I was struck by several words and several concepts, and I will explain myself. I will adding something to the conversation we already had. Living with differences is at the same time the most easy thing. We have even to live with ourselves. It's not always so easy. We have different layers in ourselves, and we have to find a peace inside ourselves. But it is the most natural thing, but at the same time, it is also the most challenging thing. And it is very easy to inject in a society hatred, hostility, and so on. Look at Sarajevo, such a city, where a multicultural city. At the end, they were killing each other. Look at Rwanda. The two tribes were living, I will not say very peacefully together, but to some extent well. But if you inject hatred, then you can destroy a society. Thessaloniki was a multicultural society, Nikos, and you described it well. A multicultural society, it was almost destroyed by the Nazis and by others. Of course, now it is re-established its old vocation, so to speak. So living with differences is the most challenging thing, and especially in our times, where we achieved already a lot. And Tim is right to emphasize that, because you always have also to give people hope. We realized a lot in our societies, also for people with intellectual disabilities. We can do more, of course, but we always have to show also that because we succeeded in the past, we will succeed in the future. As simple as that. Yes, we can. A slogan that is very familiar to our American friends. So that is not my message, but living with differences is now more different, of more challenging than a few years ago, because with the rising extremism, you can have a different opinion. That's not a problem. But when the day that you say you have a different opinion, thus you are my enemy, then you change the game. And not only you are my enemy, you have to be in jail, or you have to be killed, because you have another opinion, or because you are different. And then, in any case, we have to fight against that kind of new intolerance in our societies. The second thought is about this word, education of the heart. My God, I love that word. Education of the heart. We live in a society that is at the same time very rational and at the same time very emotional. Very rational in technology. We have a digital revolution never seen in the history of the human race. We have a lot of rationality in our economies, but we have a head, or we have a mind, and also we have a heart. But the heart is also composed of two kinds of feelings. The negative emotions I just described. You called it contempt, I can call it hatred, lack of respect, whatever. Negative emotions and positive emotions. So we have to strengthen the positive emotions. That is the education of the heart. The heart should not be occupied only by those negative feelings. And the best way to open the heart is to meet other people. And there is a French philosopher, I will not impress you by quoting French philosophers, but a French philosopher, he spoke about the epiphany of the human face. The day that you see the other, that it can be transformative for you. The day that you meet people with an intellectual disability, that can be a game changer. Of course, when your own kids of your grandchildren or the kids of your neighbor, you see that they, after a while, that they have intellectual disabilities, it can change your whole approach to them. And if you have not that direct personal experience, then other occasions in schools and in associative life, the media can play a huge role in all this, showing people with intellectual disabilities, for instance, also when they are participating in the games. In the Belgian television now, we have the Olympic Games, but now there's a lot of attention to Paralympic Games and also to Special Olympic Games. So, and they are not always aware of the transformative power media have in teaching, in opening the hearts of millions of people, the 100 millions of China that we will never get. But we have. There's not only a responsibility of leaders, of politicians, but also a responsibility of many others. And then opening the heart, and that is, I think, the genial approach of your mother, doing it via the sport. A very easy way. And the sport, Mary is absolutely right, is a physical exercise. But at the same time, you do it never alone. You do it together. You do it together. And the sports gives you, also for those with intellectual disabilities, but not only for them, self-confidence. It gives you a sense of dignity. I can something. Even if you don't beat a world record, you improve your personal record. And that's already an achievement in itself. And it gives you, and that struck me, it gives you a sense of purpose of life. Yes, I am somebody. Yes, I can do somebody. Yes, I can overcome difficulties. And so it strengthens your self-confidence. It gives you a purpose, a sense in your living. And so this opening of the hearts, you can do it via the sport, and the sport is not only transformative for you, the person itself, it's also for all those who are around you. Education of the heart. You know, I saw an article today in Cattimerini. I pronounce it correctly, I hope. In Cattimerini, Tim, they didn't mention too much or brilliant speeches. unfortunately. But they showed the dancers. But that was magic yesterday evening. It was magic. They were either angels or priests in some way. And they did together. It was a comes a unified exercise. And I think what the paper showed was touching the heart. And the education by the heart, via, for instance, via the media. So this that struck me, and I wanted to say it again. And this morning, the run, that one is very moving. I was not running. I have a problem with my Achilles heel, but don't underestimate me when I'm recovered. Even at 77, that's 1 kilometer I could do. But that enthusiasm, those positive feelings, people with intellectual disabilities and others. Of course, the sun was helping us. The sea, the thalassa was helping us a lot. But then looking at it, I don't need a big speech. We're just looking, and you go home or you go to the hotel happier than you were before. As simple as that. Opening the heart of the leaders, of course, it is a continuous task to make them sensitive to new forms of inclusion, because we succeeded in a lot of inclusion in the last 50 or 60 years. We had the social security system that they didn't have before the war. There is another way of opening the heart of political leaders, is becoming a political leader yourself. That's something else. Declarations, as you mentioned in 2006, are helpful. They are not, of course, all depends on the implementation, but it gives a reference to many leaders, and it are all stepping stones in creating another kind of mentality, another kind of society. So I will not speak too long, because that's also a temptation for those who have the habit of speaking. But at the end, I want to give you another message. You will receive this Theophano Prize. Because it is what you did is what we wanted to achieve when we created that prize with many friends here in Greece. But actually, you deserve more than the Theophano Prize. Peace in the world is the sum of so many initiatives in our society. It is not only at the macro level that you achieve. You have to create peace, as I said, with yourself, with your neighbors, with those who are different from you. And we should recognize that peace is the sum of many pieces, many layers of peace. So one day, but you should invite us. One day, you will stay at another scene, another setting. I had the privilege to be there once in the city hall of the city of Norway. I think that Special Olympics one day should be the Nobel Peace Prize.
Thank you for this inspiring discussion. I think it gives us more purpose for this award. I heard that there is one athlete, the Greek athlete, that just wanted to make a last comment, if we may. And we will farewell you with a video, which is the Special Olympics Inclusion Manifesto.
peaceful protesters in a rebellion against anyone who has a fear of difference. I demand equality, dignity, and recognition of our shared humanity. We will not stop or accept anything less. We are deserving. When we compete, we're fighting for a more inclusive world. We are champions on the field and for this cause. Today, our world is more divided than ever, and coming together has never been more urgent. The revolution is inclusion, and it is not optional. The only choice you need to make is how you will join it.
In Stavropoli, here in Thessaloniki. The message that I would like to convey to you, Mr. Shriver, is that through my sport, which is swimming, I am calm and relaxed, and my attempt counts. I make every possible effort so that I can participate once again in the next World Games, not only for the medals, but because I want to meet new people and to participate in this feast. The moving force, the driving force for me is my dreams. My goal is to make something creative, that is to draw, to read, not school books, and to write stories and fairy tales. I believe that people with disabilities, and especially with intellectual disability, are people that should be helped in order to adjust themselves to real life, to guide them in a nice, kind way, to take care of them and to show them the correct technique of sport in order to participate in a sports society and community. And at the same time, they will blossom together with our love. I would like to thank the chairman of Special Olympics, and I'd like to thank all the people from Theophano Foundation for your hospitality.